so to speak to your point about have I ever faced this type of antipathy and so on, I gave 2 talks when my first book came out at a university in the psychology department and in the business school. They were back to back, on 2 separate days. So this was a talk on my book, How Do You Darwinize the Field of Consumer Behavior? I gave it in the psychology department first, which is made up of a lot of people who have background in neurosciences and biology. And they all listened and said, yeah, beautiful, no kidding. I mean, of course, to study our consumatory nature, we have to understand the biological impulses that drive us. Great. Exact same talk the next day in the business school. This is one of the top universities in the world. I couldn't get through a single sentence. Why? Because of the amount of hostility that I faced.
In the business school?
In the business school.
Why business school?
So I think, so this is a very interesting question. So I think business practitioners, in other words, business people, not business academics, actually love my work, or historically have loved my work, because they're not vested in a particular paradigm.
All they care ideology. Right? They care about results.
What works, right?
So, what earns them money.
Exactly. You're going to tell me what are the evolutionary triggers for me to develop a more effective advertising campaign?
I'm in.
Talk to me, Professor Saad. I don't give a shit about your paradigmatic fights in academia.
But
yes, but the academics who've been vested in social constructivism or in cultural relativism. Every culture is relative. There are no human universals. There is no shared human nature. There is no shared biological heritage. Then I come in on my biology train, and I'm dangerous. We got to shut this guy down. Now, the reality is, if you're sufficiently confident about what you're doing, you ride out that storm. And luckily for me, now 20 years into the game, more people are coming to seeing things in the way that I'm saying them. But it's taken a lot of dogged fighting to convince people of the veracity of what I'm saying. Because,
so when you were giving these speeches and you were being interrupted, like what are they saying?
So example, I'll give first one. How do you explain homosexuality? Right, because their first instinct, no pun intended, instinct is an evolutionary term, they want to show that if everything is evolutionary, if everything is adaptive, then how could you explain something like homosexuality, which by definition is Darwinian cul-de-sac, a dead end, right? Mm-hmm. Well, then I say, well, there are some evolutionary theories that try to explain homosexuality, but that's not really the focus of my talk. Can I just go on? How do you explain suicide? Here's the other. Now, if we are these adaptive creatures that have this survival instinct, how do you explain the fact that there's an epidemiology of suicide? Why would somebody take their own life? So if I start...
That's pretty easy to describe. I don't think I'd have a problem with...
No, but then imagine if this goes on for every syllable that I utter, right?
So these are students that are interrupting
No,
you?
these are professors.
Professors.
As a matter of fact...
That's so rude.
This is so 2 points I'll make. The more senior the person in the room, the more hostile they were.
Really?
So the doctoral students who took me out to lunch after were all like, oh man, I love your stuff, Professor Saad. Now why? Again, anecdotally, we can understand why. Because the more senior professors are vested in their paradigms. Therefore, their brains are closed to any ideas that might challenge the status quo. The doctoral student who's still surfing at the buffet of ideas is open to the idea, oh yeah, biology seems to make sense. The second thing that I'll point when you said it's very rude, I actually got upset. I mean, I tried to stay with decorum and politeness, but as we were leaving, I took a couple of those senior folks and I said, what is the point of inviting me here and wasting your money and our respective time by not giving me a chance to get through my talk? Wouldn't it make more sense to give me the forum, and then at the end of the day, if you decide that it's not worthwhile, you throw it in the garbage, but at least you've given me the opportunity to share my ideas with you? Oh, no, Professor Saad, you mistook our interruptions. It's because we were so engaged. I said, well, it can't be really engaged when you're not allowing me to finish a syllable.
Well, not only that, it's really simple to take notes and then at the end of it ask you questions.
Right.
Why do they feel like they have the right to interrupt your speech?
That's a great question. I usually ask people to hold off their questions till the Q&A period, but I don't know why, but especially in business schools, and certainly in some of the top business schools, there's this culture of very sort of alpha maleness where you hammer at the person, because you're trying to one-up them up, and it's very, very... There's a great story on Richard... Do you know who Richard Feynman is?
Yes.
The great Nobel Prize-winning physicist. I think I read it in his book, Surely you must be joking, Mr. Feynman. So I hope I don't botch the story, but the story goes something like this. He's giving his sort of pre-final dissertation talk, his sort of departmental talk. He's still a doctoral student at Princeton in front of the who's who of leading physicists throughout. I mean, Einstein is there and everybody's there. And as he's giving his talk as a young doctoral student, there is this one professor who's interrupting him in the way that those folks were interrupting me at that school. And from the corner somewhere, apparently, Albert Einstein says, "Don't you think we owe the young man the respect to let him finish speaking? And then I'm sure at the end of his talk, he'll have plenty of opportunities to answer us." And then after that, nobody said anything. So I think it's part of that baboon sort of guerrilla thing. I'm going to show you that I'm the smartest guy in the room. So you typically see it from not the truly elite. The truly elite don't have to do this.
Right.
But the guys just below want to show that they're the toughest guys in the prison yard, and therefore they interrupt you, they harass you, they heckle you, and so on.
The same type of people that would go after you with like a hate blog.
Exactly.
Professors that are just fringe intellectuals that just really aren't that smart, but they've achieved this notoriety and a status because of the fact they're teaching at some school.
Can I mention one such guy?
Sure.
A grand buffoon, P.Z. Myers. Do you know who that is?
Yeah, I know who that guy is.
One of the most execrable creatures that has ever walked academia. I don't know him personally well, but he's the exact type of guy who exhibits those types of behaviors. He has an incredibly successful science blog. Hat tip to him for having that forum. But all he does all day is attack fellow scientists in extraordinarily, poisonous manners. It's never respectful. Certainly evolutionary psychologists, we're all lobotomized idiots who are faking science. He's the real scientist. All of us are just idiots who couldn't, are borderline illiterates. And the reality is the last time that he ever published something was probably around the period of the Renaissance. And yet he feels perfectly comfortable criticizing folks who are infinitely more productive than him. And I only call him out now. I don't know him, but I just despise this type of bully, this kind of arrogance. When they are incredibly honest, hardworking scientists that in their best way are trying to understand the world. But here's this guy who's got a huge soapbox. I mean, I think over 100 million views and visitors on his site. So he's got a big platform. He's just denigrating everybody.
There's a lot of there's a lot of action in that. Like there's a lot of eyes. If you're one of those people that writes a hate blog, you can get a lot of attention doing that. And some people become very addicted to attention. And if you notice, they start repeating those patterns and blogging constantly over and over again. And then also, what he also does is anybody who opposes him, he deletes them from the comments, even if they're respectful. If you're an idiot, you don't know what you're talking about, it gets rid. And I became aware of him because of that whole Michael Shermer debacle.
Yes, the rape thing, right?
Yeah. Well, he accused Michael Shermer of rape because he had sex with a woman consensually while they were both intoxicated.
At a conference, I think,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's how you got to know him. Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's how I heard of him.
Right.
And it was the way it was done was so reckless and so uninformed. Like you don't know what happened unless you were there. And also there's photos of Michael Shermer and the girl smiling weeks after this incident. It's all very sordid.
Well, it's ugliness, right? It's difficult to understand what he gets out of this sort of frivolous, diabolical ugliness,
it's
right?
attention.
It's attention, maybe.
Yeah, he gets attention, and, he is the grand poobah of the retarded social justice warriors.
Very true.
There's a lot of people like that out there, and there's a lot of attention in doing something like that. And if unfortunately it negates some really good points that they might have about a bunch of different issues, because you have to look at it through the lens of this really poisonous person.
Exactly right. The first I had heard of him was there was a incident that happened on Psychology Today with a gentleman by the name of Satoshi Kanazawa. Are you familiar with him?
No.
So Satoshi Kanazawa is a professor, an evolutionary psychologist at the London School of Economics. It's a very, very prestigious school in London, England, who was a very popular blogger at Psychology Today. But he had a very sort of bombastic style of writing that sort of drew a lot of attention because of the way he phrased things. And but I guess he thought that he was so popular that he was sort of untouchable. And at one point he wrote a blog article summarizing somebody else's work, looking at racial differences in attractiveness. So, for example, who's most attractive, white women or black women, white men or black men? And one of the results from that data set, this wasn't his own study, he was summarizing somebody else's work, was that black women had been rated as less attractive than white women. And he gave some, I guess, speculative reasons as to why that might be. So that caused a huge, furor. He's a racist. He's Japanese, by the way. He's a racist. He hates blacks. He hates this. They tried to get him out of Psychology Today. They eventually kicked him out. They tried to revoke. They started a petition to try to revoke his tenure at London School of Economics. But I'll mention 2 points. Number one, P.Z. Myers takes this example and says, look, here's what evolutionary psychology is. Here's this racist who happens to be an evolutionary psychologist. All evolutionary psychologists are racist. Well, I mean, that's what racism usually is, right? I mean,
generalizations.
All right. I know a friend who is Jewish and who was caught cheating on his taxes. That shows you Jews cheat when it comes to money because they're always looking to make the most money. That's what happens with those Jews, right? So he doesn't see the irony of that. So then I wrote an article, which I, frankly, if you don't mind me saying, took a lot of courage, and you could probably pull it up. Well, you could pull it up if you wanted, where I basically argued that to purge a blogger would set a very dangerous precedent, right? If you disagree with whatever Satoshi Kanazawa is saying, let his words come back to haunt him, right? His words will be there. If they are truly racist, if he is espousing racial theories that are pure quackery, that will be the biggest punishment he could suffer. But to remove him from the discourse, the public arena of ideas, sets a very dangerous precedent. Now, guess what happened? A lot of my academic colleagues wrote to me privately, said, my God, thank you for having the courage to write that article. That's exactly what I thought, but I didn't want to write the article because then people might think that I'm supporting Satoshi. So it shows you the cowardice of people. To me, it seemed very natural to write that article. I don't give a shit. I mean, I know what's right, and I'm going to support that principle, which is you don't ban people based on ideas that they write. Let their ideas come back to haunt them if they are bad ideas.
Not only that, why is it okay to say that there's an evolutionary desire for women to breed with an alpha male like one of these romance novel guys?
Right.
Why is it okay to say that women are more inclined to favor taller men with broader shoulders and longer hair, or whatever the fuck it is? Or why is it okay to say that women are less attractive to obese short men? Or why is it okay to say that women or that men would be less attractive to obese women, which is a fact? But as soon as you involve race,
that's it.
Then you're not allowed to look at the actual statistics. You're not allowed to look at the real numbers.
Have you noticed, by the way, that the 100 meters was very racist this year?
Was it racist? How so? Black people won?
There were no Lebanese Jews who were overweight that were in the final.
Oh.
There was no proper representation of the rich tapestry of humanity. Why were they all black? That was clearly racist. Well,
Thank